Good morning, church. This is Scott Beard from First United Methodist Church in Kirksville, and it's my privilege to be with you this morning on this Thursday morning. I pray that you're having a glorious day and that you're enjoying the spring weather that we're enjoying this time of year, or wherever you are in the country. The thing that I'd like to talk about today is this idea of what the gospel is speaking to us about loving one another, and I think this is something that often gets minimized or is a problem for some people because they have certain hatreds they can't give up, and this is a difficult thing. My clergy colleagues and our lay people just come back from annual conference this last weekend, and it was re-emphasized to me how there are those within our church that don't put grace first, that would rather put legalism first, and would rather be more judgmental than loving. And really, I think that really is a misinterpretation of the gospel. And there's so many people that, over the years, I've had people come to me and say that I was preaching too much about God's love and God's grace and not enough about damnation, and they thought I should preach more about that. And I haven't changed my ways, because I think that really the message is about love. It's about Jesus said to us to love one another as he has loved us. And I pulled out a few scriptures to remind us of this, because this is really central to Jesus' teaching. Now look at Matthew 22, starting with verse 34. Jesus is speaking with some Sadducees and Pharisees at the temple. And it says, when the Pharisees heard that he'd silenced the Sadducees, meaning that he had come back with a rebuttal against the Sadducees such that they had run out of questions to ask Jesus, and they gathered together, and one of them, an expert in the law, asked him a question to test him. And so this expert in the law says, "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" Now you can see that they were trying to trick Jesus up by saying one law is somehow greater than another. And Jesus said to them, "Well, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." Directly from Jesus' lips, words that remind us that loving one another, being in community with one another, is the most essential thing. This is what it is that we're supposed to strive for. Now, that doesn't mean that you agree with people. In fact, the people that are difficult to love are those who are really filled with hatred and rejection. And so sometimes we have to work really hard to love people like that and try and bring them along in the way of Christ. Another scripture comes from the Gospel of John, and this is the setting for this is when Jesus is having his Last Supper with his disciples, and he says, "I give you a new commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. You shall also love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." Now here Jesus is defining to us what it means to be a disciple. What it means to be a disciple is to show love first, show acceptance first, show forgiveness and grace, the way we've received love and grace from God. And sometimes I think that people like to always other people, to have people that are outside the circle of their influence as Christians or their belief systems, and they would then exclude them in some way. And this is where I think we need to really examine ourselves and our motivations. In fact, I get pretty frustrated when people claim to be Christian in one breath, and the very next breath tell me how much they hate certain people or certain groups of people or certain people who think certain ways. And that just really is not Christian. That just proves how much they're not a Christian. And this idea that some people will use Christianity as some sort of a political tool that says that I should be accepted by everyone. I'm a great person. I'm running for this office, and the reason you should vote for me is because I'm Christian, but I'm excluding a lot of other folk at the same time. And so we see the hypocrisy in that, and we see it in ourselves if we're not careful. We have to watch it, what we do in our own motivations as well. And the third scripture that I picked, and this is just a few of the scriptures that mention this. In 1 John chapter 4, starting at verse 19, it's described as this way: we love because he first loved us. We love because God first loved us. And those who say, "I love God," and hate a brother or sister are liars. For those who do not love a brother or sister whom they have seen cannot love God, whom they have not seen. The commandment we have from him is this: those who love God must love their brothers and sisters also. Now, as I've been criticized, like I said in the past, for preaching too much about love and somehow that I'm sending people to hell because I'm talking about love and grace. And I think if we got that right, I'd probably focus on something else more. But that's really the topic that I think we have the hardest time with. As much as we think we love one another, we might say we love them or we want to let them come into worship with us or something like that. But we always want to treat them as something different, something wrong, something that should be rejected. And this is where we fall short. And I really encourage each of us to think about that in our daily walk. And not just in other people, but in our own lives as well. The way that we treat other people and the way we show our own Christ-likeness to each other. In the Genesis, it says that we're made in the image of God. So we're to reflect God's love and God's grace to each and every other person. Now, I know that sometimes people will misconstrue that to saying, I'm saying you have to somehow have some sort of a love relationship with people who are hateful or who are abusive, and that is not what I'm saying. You reject the actions of certain people. You reject the people that are trying to abuse you. You reject the people that are racist or sexist. There's just so many different isms that we just can't tolerate. But you love the person, and you help them, try and help them to see a better way. The song I want to share with you this morning is one that I've known since I was a teenager, and I'm sure that you've heard this many, many times. It's called "They'll Know We Are Christians by Our Love." And it was written in 1966 by a Catholic priest named Peter Skoltas. And he was serving the St. Brendan's Parish on the south side of Chicago. And he wrote this song, "They'll Know We're Christians by Our Love," when he couldn't find a suitable song, at least in his mind, to accompany a series of ecumenical and interracial events for which the youth choir was led to sing. So here this Catholic priest was leading a youth choir. And they were trying to stress this equality of all people, equality of all races, and this acceptance of them. And he wrote this really, it's a simple but catchy song, one that I think really helps speak to this idea that we are one in the Spirit and one in the Lord as we allow God to really, truly guide our steps and guide our paths and our attitudes. So sing along, "They'll Know We're Christians by Our Love." We are one in the Spirit, we are one in the Lord, we are one in the Spirit, we are one in the Lord, and we pray that all unity may one day be restored, and they'll know we are Christians by our love, by our love, yes, they'll know we are Christians by our love. We will walk with each other, we will walk hand in hand, we will walk with each other, we will walk hand in hand, and together we'll spread the news that God is in our land, and they'll know we are Christians by our love, by our love, yes, they'll know we are Christians by our love. We will work with each other, we will work side by side, we will work with each other, we will work side by side, and we'll guard each man's dignity, save each one's pride, and they'll know we are Christians by our love, by our love, yes, they'll know we are Christians by our love. All praise to the Father, from whom all things come, and all praise to Christ Jesus, his only Son, and all praise to the Spirit who makes us one, and they'll know we are Christians by our love, by our love, yes, they'll know we are Christians by our love, yes, they'll know we are Christians by our love. My prayer for you is that you take a few moments to maybe examine your own prejudices, your own thoughts and fears of other people that are different than yourself, and find ways to show grace and love to them the way Christ does. Help them to see that they are truly supported and accepted the way they are, that God created each and every one of us in God's perfect image. Go in peace and have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.